wherever you see engagement and, liveliness going on in your brand, you do have to take that opportunity and try to do more with it.
You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and this week on the podcast, I have a fantastic guest interview. I'm talking to Liz Elfman, who is the Director of Content Marketing at DataWorld and the founder of E Squared, a copywriting agency. Liz joined me to talk about a cadence of repurposing that can sometimes be overlooked, which is taking short-form content and amplifying it into something much bigger. Specifically, we talk about how Liz and her team turned a year's worth of LinkedIn posts into an ebook. She explains what kind of LinkedIn posts they focused on, how and why they chose them, how they managed to breathe life into quite dry topics to create something engaging and energetic, and the process of actually creating the ebook. It's a fascinating and insightful repurposing story. Liz has loads of amazing insights to share, so let's dive in. Liz, welcome to the Content 10x podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I am really, really looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be amazing. We've got a really fantastic example of repurposing occurring in an unexpected place, which I'm really looking forward to digging in with you. But firstly, I explained in the intro that you are the Director of Content Marketing at DataWorld. But I'd just love for you to explain a little bit more, really, just, a bit of a summary about how you got to where you are today and what that means to be the Director of Content Marketing at DataWorld.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in the data space for a couple of years now, specifically in SaaS products. And I came here by way of being a full-time content marketer at Stack Overflow for a little while. I was running my own copywriting agency for several years prior to that. And I decided I wanted to do something with a little bit less fluctuation, a little bit less, the typical ups and downs of running your own business, as you know. And so I jumped into Stack Overflow full time, and that sort of opened up this world for me of being in very technical products that market to data people, software engineers, etc. Now, full transparency, I have zero technical background. I've tried to learn code many times and just absolutely, that's not how my brain works. So I've been pretty steeped in these challenges of marketing to technical people when I personally don't have a background in that. And I think because of that, I've found a little niche in this data space. So I typically come into startups and help them stand up a content strategy where previously there wasn't one, which means running all of the top of funnel from the blog to the resource center to sometimes sales enablement and product pages, things like podcasts and YouTube. And then we just come up with a quarterly balance of volume versus quality and run with that, and then experiment, see what happens, measure, and then refine from there. So that's kind of my day-to-day.
Sounds great. Sounds very varied and interesting, and I'm sure you are constantly kept on your toes with all of that work that you're responsible for in the content world. So we are going to be talking about the really interesting story of how you repurpose a year's worth of LinkedIn posts into an ebook. So on the Content 10x podcast, it's always about content repurposing. It's about ways that we can do more with less, ways that we can repurpose our content. Sometimes it's really, strategically, carefully planned in advance repurposing. And sometimes it's where, those opportunities just strike us in sometimes unexpected places. And the story that you and I spoke about previously to this episode of how you guys took all these LinkedIn posts and then created an ebook really took my attention. And that's what I'd love to talk about today. So if we could start at the start, What were the LinkedIn posts? Like, what kind of posts were they? And was it the same person? Was it the page? So what kind of LinkedIn posts were you repurposing?
Yeah, definitely. So at our company, we're really lucky to have a lot of super academic, really smart sort of subject matter experts at the top of the field and in the C-suite. One of them, our chief scientist, he's this guy called Juan Cicada, and he is just a brilliant scientist and kind of working at the forefront of AI and data. And he has his own individual platform that's sort of got nothing to do with the company. But he would go out into the world and travel the country, even sometimes across the ocean, and have these dinners where he would gather data leaders from various industries and backgrounds, and they would all talk. And he labeled them the honest, no BS dinners because he really wanted them to be no marketing, no selling, no, just get the brand out of it and have honest conversations about what's going on in the data world, what's working for you, what are leaders doing, what has failed miserably, etc. So he would have these little salons, if you will, and then just write a short LinkedIn post afterwards with some takeaways and little notes. And in the data space with SaaS, it's very technical, it's very dry. It's hard sometimes as a marketer to breathe life into these concepts that are just, they're useful and they're practical for people who are data engineers and analysts. But for the average person, when you're like, oh, this is a data catalog built on knowledge graph architecture, like it's not really that exciting, right? It's not so lively. It's not intriguing. You're not like, tell me more. And so with these dinners and these LinkedIn posts, I saw that this man has a platform and he's got his own personality and brand, and he's kind of fiery and funny and knowledgeable and very lively. And then also these posts and these takeaways were not your typical like ChatGPT could just write this. It's a listicle. It's real insights, really original research that he was doing sort of off the cuff and then just summarizing in these LinkedIn posts.
So that sounds, fantastic, really good, really valuable posts, and somebody who's obviously, got a really good way of communicating, having those unique insights as well. And so you're sitting on all these great posts that have accumulated through the series and through the year, and you're thinking to yourself, right, we could do something more with this. And the concept of turning it into an ebook. How did you start with that then, in terms of taking that written content and then thinking through, like, how would you order it? How would you create the ebook? Like, what was the process to turn it from one to the other?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Basically, I just wanted some way to capture these that weren't so fleeting. And I noticed when I put them all together, and I think I took all of the copy and put it into like a Google Doc or something. And I noticed that there were these little themes, across the months and across the cities. People would talk about the same stuff. They would share the same struggles. They would share similar themed, issues, solutions. So I decided, hey, why don't we capture this in a more sustainable way, a more evergreen way, and group it by theme. So I feel like there was a choice between going, January they said this, February they said this, March they said this, but instead I just thought, let's order it by theme and then just cherry pick from every month and every dinner things under that theme, group it, and then put it into a nice resource that's downloadable, ungated, and have some design thrown in there as well, just to make it more tangible, because there was so much real insight and original research in there. It felt like it merited more than just a few LinkedIn posts, scattered into the wind and then forgotten about forever.
That makes sense. Like it, and the way that you found the themes and created chapters and things like that, as opposed to, I didn't think really that you were going to say that you chronologically put the, just like this selection of posts, because it makes more sense to bring some order and structure when it's turned into an ebook. And you mentioned about some design as well, and some visual elements to the ebook. When you positioned the ebook and you're asking people to download it, you're telling them what it's about, did you say this ebook is based on all the great LinkedIn posts that you've been seeing coming out from one over the time, or did you just position it as something new and different without the mention of the original source from the ebook?
Yeah, I think in the blurb on the landing page, we sort of set the scene and told the story a little bit. So over the last year, our chief scientist has been hard at work, in conversation with more than 150 data leaders across the country. They shared their struggles, honestly, no BS, and here's what they had to say. So just tried to make it enticing in that way and then lead to the asset.
Yeah. And then when you included some visual design elements to the ebook, was any of that things like leading back to the dinners and the meetings, like any photographs and things like that? Or was it more just specifics to the points being made and graphics and things like that created about the content itself?
Yeah, because it was a year wrap up and it was, you're in that rush like any marketer is to do the whole either end of the year thing or it's the beginning of the year. Here's what's in store for this year. There was a real time crunch. And so instead of having photographs and collecting, visuals from externally, I just had them pull out different things. So, for example, some data leaders talked about the FAIR principles in data management, and I can't off the top of my head tell you what they are. It's this acronym, it's FAIR, and each letter stands for something, and that came up over and over again. So I just had the designers pull that out and draw special attention to it, put like the text against a different background, and anytime there was something that was a little more enticing or engaging or thematic, I just tried to have them pull it out, like a pull quote or, an acronym like that, and just vary the design in that way and make it a little more visually engaging.
That makes sense. And my repurposing head is immediately going to almost like a loop that would then close, because you've created the LinkedIn post and then you've done the, ordering and putting it into a book and then created these design elements that are going into the book. But then those individual quote images and graphics and things like that you just mentioned, to me, it immediately jumps out, oh, well, they could get back and be reposted as new content then onto the social platforms as well. So were you able to repurpose the graphics that were created to bring the ebook to life into additional new and different LinkedIn content as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely what we did. So we got a lot more mileage out of it.
Yeah, it's like the gift that keeps on giving, basically, then, isn't it? Because then you create more content. I wondered, as you were working through the content in order to create the different sections of the book, were you spotting content gaps as well? So did it give you an opportunity to bring some themes together and think, oh, actually, we could probably do with more content on this to close that gap and things like that, that you could then feed into future content planning?
Yeah, definitely. I think with original research, when you aren't necessarily working with the budget where you can go out and say, hire Forrester to conduct all this original stuff and come back to you with all these insights and numbers, I was definitely thinking, we've got to get more numbers going on in here, more quantitative statistics. Like, I think in order to stand out in this day and age, that original research piece and those numbers, when you can adequately speak to the business case of something like, we saved 25% of data scientists' time this week, or we were able to complete like a data pipeline job 35% faster. Anything that actually speaks to the business case of how we finished something or how we got something done faster, how we created efficiencies, how we were more productive is really useful. Because again, with the proliferation of AI and ChatGPT, it's really easy to just get any content live. So now the question isn't how much can I ship, but just what can I ship that actually delivers value and is original and couldn't necessarily be written by just a competitor in the space or really anyone anywhere.
Yeah, I really like what you just said as well about with AI, because one approach that I imagine some people may have made in the circumstances that you were in of thinking, right, let's turn these LinkedIn posts into an ebook, would have been to, slam them all into ChatGPT or whatever, and then tell ChatGPT, turn all of these LinkedIn posts into an ebook, see what happens there. Did you use AI at all? And I'd love just to know your thoughts as well on what would you think of an approach like that, and what do you think the results would be?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, I'm all for it. And I myself, as a copywriter, do use ChatGPT most days. especially when it comes to the stuff I'm writing about, because again, it's so technical, it's data, it's not my background. I truly have no idea what the people on my team are talking about a lot of the time. And so just to fill in those gaps and act as a study aid, ChatGPT can be really useful, but I'm also always really careful to make sure that I'm never copy and pasting something from there just because there are hallucinations. It might tell you the wrong thing. And also, if you use ChatGPT a lot, you start to realize over time that ChatGPT has a really distinct voice. It's pretty easily detectable. And so when you're using it, you can easily spot it online, or, if a freelancer turns something into me, I can easily tell in many paragraphs, oh, you definitely use ChatGPT here. No shade. It's great. But I can tell that it's not your voice anymore. It's OpenAI's voice. And so I try to use it as more of a study aid. And in this case, I think I just filled in the gaps like, these data leaders said this. Can you tell me anything more about what that means or what that concept is? And then took those concepts and molded them into my own little paragraph.
Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides, and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode. Yeah, that's excellent. What a good example of the way that you can use it to enhance what you're doing. I totally agree with you that you can spot a mile off when the tone becomes ChatGPT, can't you? I've had a few instances of that this week, actually, including the fact that we're currently recruiting at the moment, and we've had, maybe 20 applications to a position in the last 24 hours, of which we've spotted almost word for word identical answers to some questions because the candidates have just asked ChatGPT to answer the question for them.
Oh my gosh, no way. That's wild.
It's wild, isn't it? What do you think about if you'd put the posts that you were wanting to work with to go into the ebook, and you'd given ChatGPT the role of assess this content and come up with the themes? How you were saying, you went through, you picked out the themes to become the chapters in the book. What kind of a job do you think it would have done if you'd said pick out the 5 key themes and order this content into the themes that they belong? Do you think it would have done a good job with that?
I really do. I'm pretty pro ChatGPT. I'm definitely not of the school where it's like, I'm not trying to be a cop about ChatGPT and, hey, we've identified that you've used this, let's punish it. I definitely see it as more of an aid and a tool, but it definitely isn't a replacement for a copywriter, for a content strategy at all. But for inspiration, for themes, I think it can be great. I use it all the time. Sometimes if I'm writing something with 5 different themes, maybe 2 of them come from ChatGPT and 3 of them come from myself. And then the 2 that come from ChatGPT, I'll put my own spin on it. But usually I haven't found, maybe I'm not a good enough prompt writer or it's just not there yet. But I've found that when I ask it, hey, can you just straight up write this for me? It's always sort of lacking. I edited a proposal recently that was definitely written by ChatGPT, and I swear it was 15 pages of saying the same 4 sentences over and over again with slightly different words and slightly different, ways of saying it. And I truly felt like I was going crazy. I was like, I can't believe this is this long and it's just saying the same thing over and over. So it can look like the shell of something that has substance, but a lot of times when you go one level further and you look into it, start breaking it apart, the substance is a lot of vapor in there as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we really have to make sure that we maintain our quality standards, don't we? And really critically review things, because it is really easy to just see a load of words on the screen and be so happy that that just happened in front of our eyes in seconds, to just think, well, it's good enough or it seems okay and things like that. But you absolutely have to make sure that you are not throwing any quality standard out of the window, and you actually critically review it. No, but is it good? Like, is it good, and not just good enough? And well, it was done in seconds, so it's good enough. But well, that's not good enough. Isn't good enough, is it? So,
Right. And it's
yeah,
like, it's a great, there's nothing more intimidating than a blank page. And to have a blank page suddenly become filled with words, it's a huge relief. But you can't just stop there, right? It's great to have something to work with. Sometimes it's easier to edit than to write, but ChatGPT is just not sophisticated enough. And I don't know that it ever will be. That's more of like a philosophical quandary, but it's just not sophisticated enough to do the job in and of itself.